On the 20th of February 2016, the official Linux Mint website was delivering malware. Thousands of people installed it themselves, convinced they were safe. Users from around the world were visiting the official Linux Mint website to download one of the most popular Linux distributions. They didn't know that behind that download lurked something far more dangerous than a simple ISO file. Someone had modified the operating system image and replaced it with an infected version containing a backdoor through which attackers could access any computer it was installed on. This is a textbook case of a software supply chain attack, and it remains, to this day, one of the boldest attacks in the history of the Linux community. There is a deeply rooted belief in the Linux world. We are safe, we don't have viruses, we don't have malware, attacks are for Windows users. This mindset isn't entirely wrong. The Linux ecosystem has real security advantages. But in 2016, this belief had in some ways become a vulnerability in itself. Linux Mint users were people who had become aware of the risks in the digital world. Many had migrated precisely because they wanted a safer, more controlled, more transparent system. They were users who read documentation, participated in forums, and knew the difference between an ISO and a live USB, and yet they were the very targets of this attack. Not through a complex technical exploit taking advantage of a kernel vulnerability or a network service, but through a far simpler and far more effective method, compromising the source itself. If you manage to infect the file that people download with complete confidence from the official website, you no longer need any other attack vector. The victim installs the malware themselves, convinced they're doing exactly the right thing. It is in essence an attack on trust, and that is precisely why it was so dangerous and so instructive. It all started with the compromise of the official linuxmint.com website. The attackers managed to breach the web server and modify the download links. Instead of directing users to the original ISO image, those links now pointed to a modified version hosted on an external server. This modified image contained a backdoor based on a variant of malware known as Tsunami, sometimes also referred to as chitin. Once installed on the victim's computer, the malware connected the machine to a command and control server at absintvodka.com. Essentially, your computer became part of a botnet, a network of compromised machines controlled remotely by the attackers without you knowing anything about it. What could this botnet do? Almost anything. It could be used for distributed DDoS attacks, for sending spam, for extracting data from infected computers, or for installing additional malicious programs later. The attackers had full control, and the most alarming aspect, nobody had noticed anything. Users downloaded the file, installed it, booted their computers, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Linux Mint worked flawlessly. There were no visible signs that anything was wrong. The attack was detected relatively quickly on the morning of the 21st of February 2016, but not by the Linux Mint team itself. A security researcher had noticed something suspicious. The MD5 checksum displayed on the site no longer matched the file being downloaded. That was the first red flag. Clem Lefebvre, the founder and leader of the Linux Mint project, immediately published a blog post warning the community. The tone was direct and honest, exactly what the situation called for. He explained what had happened, which versions were affected, and what users needed to do. The quick conclusion was that the only compromised ISO was Linux Mint 17.3 Cinnamon, both the 32 bits and 64 bits versions. If you had downloaded a different version, a different edition, or had used torrents or direct HTTP links instead of the links on the website, you were safe. But if you had downloaded the Cinnamon ISO on that February 20th using the official link on the site, you had serious reason for concern. The Linux Mint team immediately published the correct MD5 checksums for each legitimate version of the ISO. Users could run a simple terminal command md5sum filename.iso and compare the result with the official values. If it didn't match, the ISO was compromised. Affected users received clear instructions. Disconnect the computer from the internet, back up personal data, reinstall the operating system from a trusted source, and change all passwords, especially the email password. Things didn't stop at the infected ISO. It was quickly confirmed that the attackers had also compromised the official Linux Mint forum database. This contained sensitive information. usernames, encrypted passwords, email addresses, and any personal information users had entered in profiles, signatures, or private messages. The passwords were encrypted, which was good news. They couldn't be read directly. But encryption isn't invulnerable. Through brute force or dictionary attacks, simple passwords or those based on personal information can be cracked relatively easily. That's precisely why the team immediately recommended that all forum users change their passwords, starting with their email password. This double blow infected ISO plus compromised forum database showed that the attack had been carefully planned. This was not an amateur hacker trying their luck. It was a coordinated operation. Investigations quickly led to concrete clues. The server hosting the infected ISO and the domain absentvodka.com both trace back to Sofia, Bulgaria. The Linux Mint team identified the names of 3 individuals associated with that infrastructure. Their guilt was not publicly confirmed, but the information was made available for potential investigations. Several security companies also stepped in to help. Avast analysed the infected ISO and issued updates for its users. Kaspersky blocked the malicious domains through its DNS sinkhole mechanism. The firm securely scanned and cleaned the Linux Mint servers and later entered into an official partnership with the project for ongoing monitoring and protection. For many users, the initial reaction was disbelief. Linux was the safe system, chosen precisely because it protected you from this kind of risk. And suddenly, that certainty was gone. But the overall tone of the community surprised everyone. Instead of turning into a wave of criticism, the conversation quickly took a constructive direction. Experienced users began helping others verify checksums, understand what a backdoor meant, and work through the remediation steps. People who had never met were helping each other navigate a stressful and confusing situation. The attack also served as a crash course in digital hygiene. How many of those who had been downloading ISOs over the years had ever verified a checksum? How many knew what GPG was? The uncomfortable answer was very few. In the long run, the transparency with which the Linux Mint team handled the crisis generated a level of respect and loyalty that would have been hard to earn under normal circumstances. The community went through a difficult moment together and came out of it more united than it had gone in. 10 years later, this incident remains an extremely relevant case study. The first and most important lesson is file integrity verification. Before installing any operating system or any critical software, check the checksum whether MD5 or preferably SHA-256 and ideally the GPG signature. It's a simple step that can make the difference between a clean system and a compromised one. The second lesson concerns passwords. If you use the same password across multiple platforms, a single breach can compromise dozens of accounts. A password manager and unique passwords for each service are no longer a luxury, they are a necessity. The third lesson is about transparency. The way the Linux Mint team handled the crisis, communicating openly, quickly, and honestly, was exemplary. In a world where companies often try to conceal security breaches, Clem and his team chose to put users first. That decision saved the project's reputation. And last but not least, the lesson about infrastructure. After the attack, Linux Mint moved to HTTPS across nearly all of its sites, changed the way it presents verification information, and considered reintroducing a default firewall in the distribution. Security is not a destination, it is a continuous process. On the 20th of February 2016, a few hours were enough for a well-planned attack to threaten thousands of users who had done nothing wrong. They downloaded a file from an official website and believed they were safe. The story of the Linux Mint hack reminds us that in the digital world, vigilance is not optional. 10 years later, the Linux Mint community is stronger, more secure, and more aware of these risks. And we, as users, have a responsibility not to forget the lessons of the past. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe for more videos from the world of Linux Mint. And next time you download an ISO, verify the checksum. Seriously.